Let's start off with this. This is the second year of Mike Elko, 9 games in, undefeated, number 3 team in the country, looking like not quite a lock, but almost a lock for the college football playoff at this point in time. Ahead of schedule, on schedule, where are we at in terms of where the expectations were at this point for Mike Elko?
Yeah, I think coming off of last year and the fall that kind of happened at the end of the last season, just due to the many reasons, I think that they didn't have the talent. I think the Le'Veon Moss injury. Kind of seeing that, I think a lot of fans are kind of down after what kind of felt like a year where A&M could have gotten ahead and they kind of missed on this opportunity. I think coming into this season, a lot of people kind of expected this to be a much better team. But with the schedule, it looked like preseason, everyone kind of thought, okay, this may be another 8-4, maybe 9-3 season. And so obviously sitting here at 9-0 is pretty awesome. But there's still a lot of work to be done. And I think Mike Elko will be the first one to tell you that. But I think right now, like, they have an opportunity to go and do something for A&M that we haven't seen in a long time. And it continues this week in South Carolina.
Jaxson, it's Jack. Hope you're doing well, man. You mentioned kind of the schedule there that A&M has had to play this year, and that kind of leads me into my question. Look at the schedule. I mean, yes, they went to Notre Dame and won a really tight-knit game, but especially in SEC play, haven't had to play the toughest schedule. I mean, look at it. Auburn, Mississippi State, Florida, Arkansas, LSU, Missouri. All those teams have one thing in common, that they don't have a winning record in conference play. So my question is, how much has that kind of helped A&M get to where they are? And what have you kind of learned about them through what they've had to go through in conference play?
Yeah, and when we have these discussions, I think, especially with the college football playoff rankings now, it's a bigger topic than ever. And I think when you look back at the games, and I think even preseason, you probably thought that a lot of these games would be much harder than they were. I think you thought Auburn and Florida were going to be better teams than they panned out to be. And so when you kind of look at it, I think A&M's still been able to find gutsy wins, especially when you look back at the Auburn game, when everything was being called and you're kind of in a weird spot with penalties and you're not able to quite get going. I think that they've kind of built this reputation, just gut out wins when they need to. And, obviously, like we're saying, A&M, the schedule hasn't looked as great as you kind of expected it to preseason. But that Notre Dame game does loom large. I still think that's one of the best wins in college football. They haven't been properly tested either, but, when looking at the schedule going ahead, I think South Carolina is still a very talented team. You saw them compete with Alabama just a few weeks ago. And then you have Texas here in a couple of weeks who is looking to get better week by week. So I think for A&M, you're going to continue to see, I think the identity will continue to evolve into something else. But right now, I think it's a team that just continues to find ways to win games, especially on the road.
Hey, Jaxson, it's Wes. I kind of think of defense when I think of Elko, but, man, you guys have maybe one of the more balanced offenses, explosive. You have a quarterback who can throw it and run it. I feel like maybe just one of the more explosive attacks in the country right now in terms of just being able to do so many different things. But just watching them on a week-to-week basis, what can you tell us about kind of this offense and the steps they've made this year compared to last?
Yeah, so even looking back to last year, I think South Carolina fans know more than anybody that last year A&M didn't really have the weapons to compete after Le'Veon Moss went down. And you saw that it was a really good Gamecock defense that just completely locked down that unit for the rest of the game once Moss went down. This year it's a lot different. They brought back all their offensive line starters. Early on there were a lot of penalty issues, but those have since been cleaned up. Marcel Reed has kind of transformed into a much better quarterback, somebody who is more aware of what's happening, and he can really get the ball downfield, whether it's with his arm or have his playmakers do it for him. And the depth that they have at wide receiver now. We talked about Casey and Mario, who are two of the nation's best receivers. But I think when you look at Terry Bussey, Ashton Bethel-Roman, there's a lot of guys that can make plays. And if you look at the tight end room, the tight end room is much better than it was last year. I think there's a solid identity there. You didn't have a pure blocker. I think that you may have one of the highest graded tight end blockers in the country, Nate Borkheischer. And then the running back room, Le'Veon Moss is out, but they still have the depth there to compete. I think Ruben Owens is a really solid back. And so A&M's really been able to use all this versatility, and they have a lot of breakaway speed at all these positions that they didn't have last season, a year ago. So I think with A&M, the identity has been being able to get Marcel Reed, get it to the playmakers in space, and then allow him to kind of fill the holes with his feet, or have the running backs kind of pick up that load.
Jaxson Callaway of Aggie joining us here on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. You mentioned Mario Craver, who did pop up on the injury report last night, is questionable. What can you tell us about his status heading into the weekend?
Yeah, I think heading into the weekend, we're still kind of going to see how these next couple of days go. I don't know if any final decisions have been made there. So I think that's something that we're probably going to know by late tonight, probably early tomorrow. So I'd probably expect an indication on the injury report from that on there. But from aside of him, I think on the injury report, A&M's looking pretty good as well. So we'll see what happens there. But I would assume he may be a go this weekend, but I don't think that they're going to force him to play if they don't think he's needed.
Jaxson, just big picture question here. What's kind of the overall buzz right now in College Station? Like, I think around this time of year, A&M fans and college football fans are kind of just used to A&M kind of filtering out, kind of losing a few games and being out of the college football playoff picture. But this is different. I mean, undefeated still, have a real chance to go to the SEC championship. Is there any worry over these next 3 weeks with a slip up, or is everything kind of just feeling good right now, like they're going to be fine?
Yeah, and that's completely warranted. And there's a thing that we call battered Aggie syndrome, where no matter how good things are going right now, it's going to get bad at some point. And so I think A&M fans have really been fighting that feeling over the last couple of weeks, and it's so far so good. But I think for A&M, just being able to maintain this momentum, I think that this is a team where you have to go out and beat a really solid Gamecock team who the record may not show it, but I think that they're able to make plays to win a football game. Lenora Sellers is still one of my favorite quarterbacks in the whole country. I think that there's been a lot of inconsistency along the offensive line and the run game for them that it may not have resulted in the wins that they want to, but I think it starts this weekend, and we'll kind of see what this weekend means for them. A&M cannot clinch an SEC conference title berth this weekend, but I think if they're able to go out this weekend and get a convincing win, that's a vote of confidence going forward for them.
Hey, Jaxson, if there is a weakness on this A&M squad that you can identify, what is it, even if it's something that's maybe not a huge weakness? Like, what would just be going into this game an area of concern where you guys are still saying, all right, if A&M's going to win a championship or win a national title, this is the area that has to get shored up down the stretch?
Yeah, for me, I think two things stand out to me, and they're both on the defensive end. I think the interior, sometimes that they just allow bigger runs. I think overall they've done well they've played a lot of the conference's best backs this season. I mean, they've held them to respectable numbers, but there have been large breakout runs in each of those. But outside of that, they've been really, really solid. And in the secondary, I think that they're still Will Lee has had a little bit of a drop-off from last season. Des Ricks has actually taken a step up, but he is one of those guys that can get handsy at times, and it's kind of hurt A&M in terms of keeping hold of that momentum when you have them on 3rd and long and they take a deep shot drop, but there's a PI or whatever it may be. I think that those are two ways that A&M's kind of been hurt this year, and the defense has been great at times. I think the Arkansas game is a big thing for teams to look at in terms of what you can do against A&M, and we'll see if they use it this week, but I think A&M just continues to develop. They're going to be out there starting linebacker this weekend, Scooby Williams, so that may be also a weakness to watch.